Welcome to Chick Chat with Unapologetically Karen, the podcast for women by women. I'm Karen Webb, architect, author, entrepreneur, creative junkie, and your host. Chick Chat is your resource for building your big, bold, and beautiful feminine life. So join me for some eye-opening and jaw-dropping dialogue that has people talking. Chick Chat, everyone. Today's guest is Dalene Higgins. She is a financial coach for Gen Xers, that might be a lot of us, and host of the Wealthy After 40 podcast. Being brave in her career and personal budgeting, she was able to retire at the age of 50. Okay, I'm about 9 years later. Now she's on a mission to help Gen Xers ditch their debt, save for retirement, and make their dreams a reality. Welcome. Nice to have you, Dalene.
Thank you, Karen. Excited to chat with you about anything and everything.
Yes. Okay, so let's start with how you even got into this whole financial coaching.
Yes. So, as you stated, when I retired at 50, I knew I was too young to just not do anything, to sit in the recliner, to do whatever. So I started exploring thoughts and ideas about, volunteering or, what I could do. And it really was like, you have just accomplished a really big financial goal. And that feeling, I want other people to be able to experience. They might have a different goal, but I just want to be able to be with them. And so I went down there, found all of the things about financial coaching, started my business, became an entrepreneur, which has been such a growing journey for myself. Supporting Gen Xers, because I think, number one, I identify with our generation and I want them to be able to finish up this last phase of working or whatever they're doing before the next phase, right? So this is the final phase before our amazing life that we get to have in retirement, whatever that looks like. And so that's why I pursued financial coaching, which, supports them in their day-to-day, making sure that everything is handled within,
Yes.
so that then financial planners can help us grow and, be able to support us in retirement.
So let's dive into how in the world what were you doing and how did you retire at 50, which most of the audience is probably their jaws have fallen as they've been driving their car. I am sure. So tell us how.
Yes. So, I was 18, living at home, found myself unemployed and got a government job. My dad was a government worker. He retired from government. So I was one of the fortunate ones that had an option of a pension. I was 18. That meant nothing to me. I put myself through college, still didn't mean anything to me. I'm just moving along, going along. And I changed. So I worked in law enforcement as support personnel for 2 different agencies. When I made that change from city police to county department, I was like, okay, I did 17 years at the other one. I could do 17 here. Oh, wait, I could leave in 13 years if I have everything lined up, because to take that option was a 40% cut in pay. So I was about the age of 35. My husband was also government. We had one daughter, raising her. She was young, so still had all of the things. And I just really got focused. It's not like I didn't live my life. We had, recreational property we bought. We did motorcycles. We did camping. She did sports. We did all of those things. It was just, I was focused on our financial journey. And so I could have retired at 48. But I was grateful to be able to, choose the time I wanted to go, because working, and I don't know if anybody else has this experience, sometimes you get the older coworkers and you're like, I don't want to be that person. I just, they're starting to go downhill. I wanted to go out at the top of the hill, not on the bottom of the hill. And so that was another driving force for me. So I finally I was had turned 50 and my parents were both
Mm-hmm.
gone. I looked at my husband and I said, it's time. He goes, okay, all right. And it was just a feeling. It wasn't that I wanted it exactly then. I knew I wouldn't do any more beyond the age of 53 because you don't get any more benefit from your pension. So to move on is wise. And so, yeah, I was able to take that 40% cut in pay because at the age of
Wow.
50, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have access to my 401.
Mm-hmm.
That is a
Mm-hmm.
minimum of 59 and a half, but yet
Right.
creating that and sustaining that, and mostly the the success honestly was I was saving so much into my retirement accounts that I was only living on about 60% of my income anyways. And so
Right.
recognizing that and then being, I still had to kind of shift a little bit because there's obviously taxes on top of that what I had left over, so it's a little bit less than that, but yeah, it all worked out. And so, yeah, I just wanted other people to experience that same feeling of such a big goal that you think will never happen. And
Yeah.
accomplishing it has just been great.
Okay. So yes, I think you're right. I think I don't know what percentages there are, maybe of Gen Xers who are not at all prepared or ill prepared for a possible retirement and at what age? What do you know of that?
If I recall correctly, I read the statistics probably might have been a full month ago now, and I think there's roughly like 50% feel like they could be prepared, and 25% absolutely not even ready. So it was a little bit higher than I thought, because
I
I'm like,
think
I
so
thought it would have been
too.
flipped. But I think what is really stagnating Gen Xers is we've always worked. We don't know anything different. And so,
Hmm.
they're not even like getting out of that box of like, what would it be like? What would it look like if I didn't work? And they may have more than enough. I was on a free call, it's been about 2 weeks ago now. She was a very young Gen Xer, but she's like, I am trying to play catch up and I've got all this. And she was just so distraught, but yet she was doing all the right things. And I said, well, okay, number one, the day you retire does not mean that money's not going to earn anything else. And how many 7 years do you have for your money to double? Well, in the very beginning, it's small, but if you think about every 7 years, your money is doubling, and she had a just over 14, so two sets of 7 years to get there. So think about
Wow.
it that way. Yeah.
So now when you
Yeah.
say that, doing what with your money? I mean, leaving it sitting in the bank? No. Or doing, what
No. Yeah.
exactly? Because that's like nothing. So tell us a little, yeah. So what you recommend for people to even get, closer to this goal. So I think that's a great number to say 7 years doubles your money by doing what?
By saving, number one, yes, it has to be invested somewhere. And
Hmm.
I can teach about all of those, but to actually do an asset allocation, that's a financial planner. And I might be, above the heads, but honestly, you just want to save. I've heard many financial planners say it's not necessarily the strategy, it's just the fact that you're actually doing it. So if you are only saving like 10% right now, look to increase that as quickly as you can. And one of the funnest challenges I came across on my journey was a 1% savings challenge. So every month, increase your savings by 1%. You think
Hmm.
about 1%, it's not really a lot of money. Do that every single month until you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough money. You're feeling the pinch, you're feeling the squeeze,
Right,
you're
right.
like, it's getting close. And then just pause. And I did this like 2 or 3 times, and I would go easily. I got better at it the more I did it, as it is with anything that you're starting out. But I'd go like 3, 4 months, or I'd go 5, 6 months, and then I would pause for about that long. So just know that
Hmm.
you're going to want to try and pick it up again, but that pause just to kind of get that reassurance. Yep, I can live within what I've left. And then that 1% is just like this really small amount, and it's starting to go. And really shoot to, 20% at a minimum if you can, especially since we are older and getting there. But also think about if you're paying taxes, if you owed taxes this year in any way, shape, or form, put
Hmm.
that much in your 401 today. today, and you will see a decrease on your taxes. And so that's what I try to help people and support people with through that way as well. Is like, okay, yeah, you're shifting it. You're going to get it later. So why
Hmm.
give it to the IRS now? Give it to yourself. You may have to do it later, but it'll come out of all of those funds and be taken care of for you, you know? So yeah, it's just, get it somewhere where it's going to grow, where it's going to see stocks and bonds and all of those things, EFTs, real estate, that type of
Hmm.
thing,
Hmm.
and start
Hmm.
exploring that. But the first step is you've got to get the money there.
Interesting. Okay. And what would you say to people who say, like, I can't, you know, so many women, well, first of all, so many women, I think, feel a sense of inadequacy or inexperience when dealing with money. And I don't know, I'm not quite sure yet if it's just historically, by the time we were able to get loans, et cetera, as women, it was much later in our cultural history
Yeah.
than men. But I'm also not sure if it has to do with, this just constant notion of that women are not good at math, which drives me nuts because I'm an architect by trade. And it's like, oh, come
Mm.
on, we can do
Yeah.
math. We can do
Yes.
math really well. But so
Yes.
tell me, first of all, what you think is behind that, that fear or that inexperience. Um, let's start with that.
Okay, so I do have this statistic for you. 85% of household day to day finances are managed by the woman.
Hmm.
85%. That's a huge amount. So automatically it defaults to us for whatever reason. And I'm sure there's many reasons. Some is that we are better than the other spouse, in our capabilities, things like that. Number two, we have more time. Number three, who else is going to do it? And so you fall in
Yeah.
any one of those categories. But on the flip side of that, there's like that 15% of us are actually being involved in the long-term discussions of finances. So here we are handling the day-to-day, trying to make it work, the loans, the paying the bills, inflation hits, we're managing all the things. The kids want this, the kids want that, the spouse wants this. And yet, if it doesn't work out, where does the blame get placed? Whether we
Hmm.
do it just ourselves or whether it's come from the outside and it's like, you can't do this. Well, you're not doing it. So I don't know why you're throwing the blame. And I think that's where the shame is already in
Mm.
there. Okay, I didn't make this work. So I'm not good with money. I
Yeah.
can't be good with money. And honestly, I don't know about you. I never had a class on personal finance. I have my 4-year degree in accounting and I did money my entire career, but yet personal finance is completely different, and knowing how to
Yeah.
handle it and work it, and being prepared for those things is not necessarily taught. And the little bit I did see more local here, probably about 10-15 years ago, like it was not good. I didn't think
Yeah.
it was good, in as far as
Yeah. Very
sustaining and
true.
educating the kids. And so really we're going at it blindly. And
Yes.
it's that same person I was talking about on that call. She goes, I've made some mistakes. And I'm like, yep, me too. Me too.
So first, I
And
guess I would say, like, don't, yeah, don't internalize all that shame because it is, and you're right.
yes.
When you said that word about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I've heard that from so many women. And you see it all the time. They're almost embarrassed about their finances. And whenever anything is embarrassing or feels like a taboo subject, that secrecy and that shame just builds,
Yeah.
making it probably hard to even, succeed in that realm at all. What would you, okay, so let's say that we were able to put that shame aside and we're able to kind of dive in and figure it out. What do you say to people then? What if they're like, I barely can make ends meet, so I'm not sure how to even begin saving? Um, I hear that a lot, especially
Mhm.
nowadays. Inflation's crazy. Our
Yes.
economy, people are finding that, the expenses have gone up at a minimum of 25%.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
How do you handle that then if you're in this, trying to save and trying to get yourself set up for retirement?
Yes. Yes. So definitely, yeah, you have to go to the basics. And I start with the formula of what a budget is. It's income equal expenses. And in that expenses is part of your savings. So being able to manipulate that expenses
Mm.
into all of the expenses that you need. So it's going to be bills, spending, debt, and savings. Because literally, we are only saving our money for a future expense.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
being able to think about it that way, you can start balancing. And I know, people are strapped, and I get that inflation hit hard as me as well. With,
Mm-hmm.
as my husband says, we're on a fixed income, which kind of is true, but yet, being able to prepare for those changes is important. But if you
Yeah.
feel like you're still at step one, just get real with yourself on what your situation is. Because I think a lot of times my clients, when they come to me, they'll say that they'll be like, I just don't have enough money. Number one, it's either a cash flow management, their system is not supporting them, and they feel like they're always shuffling money and there's never anything left at the end. The second thing is they're not preparing for those expenses that are not monthly expenses and being able to segue into that. And so, really getting real with yourself on, is that a true statement? Or are you just feeling that way because it
Mm.
appears that way? And so really getting to the black and white. Again, math, yes, and we are good at math.
Yes, we are.
Add those up and look at that. So every client that has come to me saying that, put them in the formula of, here's your bills, here's your spending. This is money that's left over for your quote savings. Now there's a strategy and supporting that savings, because you got to, number one, start preparing for those expenses that don't happen every single month. But once you get that done, you can keep growing and keep going. And I think there's a lot of, somebody will say, hey, do you have your April budget prepared? And it's like, oh, it's not an April budget. You should have a budget that can roll with the punches, is basically what you want it to support you in. And so getting out of that frame of mind of that, I'm creating this month's budget, then you're ignoring the fact of summer vacation,
Right.
Christmas, all of those types of
Right.
things. So yeah.
So better to probably, which is kind of what I do, better to kind of look at the whole year, right, of expenses and then just divide it by the 12 is what you're saying.
Yes.
And which makes
Yes.
sense. Like in my business, every December is a big hit with, liability insurance for architecture. But yeah, I put that into every month because otherwise
Yep.
I'd get that bill and be like, oh God, didn't plan on it.
Yes.
You've got to. I agree with you.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yep. Yep.
Now, what do you say? So this is interesting. I've always felt that I've been an entrepreneur my whole adult life, um, for almost 30 years now. And what I find interesting but more difficult, um, is establishing that income. Because so a lot of people that, work for a company, you've got your set paycheck, you know what you're getting, you know what's going out in taxes, you just know. You can, as long as you keep your job, you can count
Yes.
on that monthly income. Very different for entrepreneurs who, unless your business is so thriving and you've been doing it long enough that, you can take a paycheck or a draw that's consistent every month. How do you guide people that don't have that are entrepreneurs, that are, basing it on what the cash flow in the business is that month or that year?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely entrepreneurs. So there's, realtors would be in the same situation.
Yes.
You're getting a fluctuation. So in a sense, as I was talking with expenses, I'm looking at it in the full year. If you're, so say you're a realtor or even an entrepreneur and you have a nice big month, start having that support your expenses every single month moving forward. What does that look like? If you have a 10,000, your expenses are only 2,000. I'm just using easy numbers.
Yeah.
That's going to get you out 5 months. Okay, great. That will support me in 5 months for all of that. And then just kind of prepping. But also as an entrepreneur, if you are in the business long enough, you can see seasonally what's going to
Yes.
happen
Mm-hmm.
and making those adjustments and prepping for those seasonal shifts and adjustments. Now, I know those are not always hard and fast, but there is some gist to it. And I think you can prepare for that. So then as you're projecting out the income as you get, if you know it's going to be a lower month, say in month 6, then are you going to be able to shift those expenses, or how are you going to support yourself in that lull, and just being able to prepare and That is, yeah, a lot of forecasting, a lot of future,
Yes.
looking at and preparing. So, but just trying to understand the landscape of what is happening and what's going to happen, and just trying again to roll with the punches, right? Because that's
Right.
what life is, and just being prepared for that. So, yeah, projecting your money out. Yeah, taking that
Yeah.
draw, start supporting yourself like with the profit first method. I don't know if you're familiar with that. He suggests which you take 1% of every income or revenue that you receive and set that aside as profit, and
Hmm.
try to support yourself in the expense side of the 99%. And slowly you'll start seeing that shift, and you can focus and get within that realm, and that profit becomes a component of your revenue,
I
instead
see.
of
Okay.
your revenue is paying all of your expenses, and then what's left over, oh, there's nothing. It's kind of gives that different mindset ability about it, and going, okay, I'm going to take off 1%, and I've got to make 99% of this support my business, go back into it, or whatever it looks like that way. So
Okay. Which makes sense. So let's say you do that. And so you're saying kind of take that initial 1% and put that aside.
mhm,
So you're treating it, quote, like an expense that must happen.
correct.
Okay. But then what if that month is low? Is that the one that gets cut out? Or then at least then you're looking at other possible, you know, um, wants, not needs that are in your expenses.
Yeah, so definitely you've got to be able to understand what you're giving your go. Just like if you are working a regular job and you have a job loss, the money, that you are prepping for, you're not going to continue to eat out, drive as much, do those types of
Hmm.
things. So your expense to live in that moment is actually less. And I think there should be a mirroring of that within a business. You have, if you're full on board, you can support all of this. But if things had to be scaled back to
Right.
just, then what does that look like, and what is that expense? And I think covering those expenses at a minimum would be your goal. And then creating, you have your profit, but then creating another bucket to support growth and sustainability on building other support avenues, if you're advertising, whatever it may be, to come from that difference.
Okay. Right. Exactly. Okay. And then what do you recommend a program or a way to manage? So, for example, when people do their budget, they can just do a list of expenses and then, equals a list of what your income is going to be. Do you use something that then, will actually graph or document what your real expenses and income was that month then?
So I use a cash flow success method, which ideally is just your checking accounts and your savings accounts, so that
Hmm.
you don't have to actually track anything. I say that loosely, but I know like everyday spending, it just gets to be so overwhelming to have to write
Right.
that down after the fact. But if you're able to pull that out in its own checking account with a debit card, and just watch that one number, right, as you're going through the paydays, and then your other account supports all your bills. And then anything that's left over at the end of the month becomes your quote savings. And strategically, you're going to apply that to those expenses we were talking about earlier, and then your savings goals. So supporting, vacations, and what it is that you want. So really it's a 3 bucket system that gets supported basically with 3 accounts, making sure
Okay.
all your bills get paid. You can do auto pay or manual, it does not matter, but they all come out of that one. That is where your income comes in. So a lot of my clients are trying to catch the advantage of like a money market or Chime because it comes in earlier. And so it's in accounts that doesn't support a bill pay. So
Mm.
ideally, your income comes in to where you can pay your bills so that you can immediately get those paid. There's no question. There's no decision fatigue, right? You just get in, you pay the bills that are due from that payday to the next, and then you move your money out to your spending account that's with your debit card that you're just watching. This is groceries, fuel, eating out, entertainment, what you do on the norm. And then anything that's left over in that bills account at the end of the month essentially becomes your savings buckets. So this is
Okay.
supporting your car registration, your car repairs, your home repairs, Christmas, birthdays, it could go on and on and on. But that's how you start funding that savings line. And I know that a lot of people are like, I don't have any money left. But if you're able to, to structure it in this 3 bucket, every one of my clients has had at least almost 1,000. I had a low income earner. She had $400 a month. So $400 a month to support all of those savings.
So clarify one more time. So you've got your income account, which you do pay the bills out of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So you pay the bill, you put your money in that you get, you pay your bills out of it. So that's one bucket. Is that right? Okay. Then then what's left over becomes the second bucket, right? Which is the savings.
So you create how much you spend on groceries, fuel, everything between the weeks, and that gets moved out to that second checking account with the debit card.
There you go. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then what's remaining then gets rolled out once a month to your savings bucket, which ideally should be in a high yield savings account. And right now, they're making between 4% and 5% interest right now. So throw it out there.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Now, a couple other things. Maybe I hear this question a lot. So I think I think it may be changing a bit, the answer to it. But so some people either have student debt, not so much the Gen Xers, but maybe their kids' student debt, right? Mm-hmm. Student loans. So in the past, those percentages were pretty low and people would kind of just let that, pay their minimums, et cetera.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure they are right now. So what are your recommendations about that?
You know what? I would apply them to the same as your rest of your debt, high interest debt. So if it is falling, it may be lower. You've got some credit cards. And if it's lower than your credit cards, obviously you're going to want to tackle those first. And I would just strategically do the same as any debt payoff plan. Regardless that is that student loan. I know there's some allowances for different fields of workers, whether that be nurses, government workers. I don't know all of the exhaustive of that. So I would definitely explore that and see if you qualify for anything that way. But otherwise, just throw it into the mix of how you're paying down debt.
Okay. Now, we have been talking in this group a bit about how our relationship with money affects, how our relationship with money kind of from our upbringing, from our, historically from our past, how that affects our finances today. And I've heard from a lot of people, this is the one I think I hear the most. And I can relate to this one, where let's say money is tight for a while. The minute people have that money, then they want to go buy everything that they were holding off buying before, right? Because, and I think it comes from, I don't know. I think it comes, for a lot of people, it comes from this notion that if we saved like that before, it was pulled away from us somehow. And for women, I think it happens a lot in divorce. So you're saving with your husband, you're putting money aside. You're like, we're not going to, go out to dinner all the time. We're going to save for the future, et cetera. Then that divorce hits. I can relate to this because that was definitely my, from my 20s to my 30s. And all the money gets set aside and then we never saw it. It went to all the attorneys. So I think that forms it plants that seed in your head that if you don't use it when you have it, it won't be there. What do you tell those people or how do you work with that?
So that's definitely a scarcity mindset, right? Because there's not enough. And even though you do have, then you got to get rid of it because then you wouldn't have it otherwise, even though you technically don't have it. And I know there's a lot of struggles. Well, what if I'm not here in 10 years? I have a family member who has pulled out every time he was laid off or let go from a job, his 401. So it never rolled over and grew, because he's like, I won't live that long. He is now at that age that, and he can't retire. And so I understand the living for the now and balancing that future is definitely a hard shift and balance to get to. My daughter just shared that with me as well. She's in her, she just turned 26. So early 20s, 20s as well. It's like, well, what if I'm not going to be here? And I'm like, but what if you are? So honoring yourself. And I know this is it's hard to visualize this, but honoring yourself today at the same level that you want in the future. So I try to have people think about it that way. If you are living life really grand right now, but at 80, you're still vibrant and, could get out there, but you haven't prepared for that vibrant 80-year-old, you're
Hmm.
going to do a really, really low level of living. And so trying to recognize more effectively, like, okay, yes, I can do a lot, but I've met many 80-year-olds now that we're getting closer, right?
Right, right,
There's just a lot of 80-year-olds who are still out and they're running and they're doing and they're going and they're traveling and all of this. And so respect your future self in the fact that, are you going to want to go from high level living to poverty, to
right,
not even have enough food? I mean, that's an extreme, but it could be a reality. So trying to get a closer balance of what that can look like. What do you now, as a 20, 30, or 40-year-old, want to support in the future and have it be very much the same? Because number one, even if you aren't able to go be vibrant and doing all of those things, your health is going to need support. Your health is
right.
going to need, right, your
Yes.
care and all of that. So be respectful of your older self. And I understand that fear of, I might not be here, or if I don't use it now, it will not be there. But I think shifting that to thinking, if I can just support myself equally through all of my years, or gradually, right, as your income increases, because
Right,
as a
right.
20-year-old, you're making less than a 40-year-old, I would
Yeah,
hope, and that.
right.
So make that even balance and that shift. When I was on my journey, like I said, we bought recreational property. We had all the motorcycles, all the camp trailers. So I was working on a short term goal as well as a long term goal. And so that's how I was focused. And so I think if you can find something that you truly desire in the future and what you truly desire now, and just that, and I don't say it has to be just one thing, but supporting a lifestyle in a certain way and just starting feeding both of them today, that you're going to be okay, that you will be
Hmm.
better off.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I know sometimes we can't kind of see past right now, and that, yeah, that can
Yeah.
be to our detriment for sure. Um, yeah, definitely. So, what would you say to our audience today? First of all, if they wanted to reach out to you, if they wanted kind of additional help, is that something that you do? Share with us kind of what you do.
Yeah, yeah. So exactly. If somebody's curious and they're just wanting to know more about what all of those steps look like, go to my website, www.elevatefinances.us. Has all of my programs on there, but I do an initial discovery session that basically gets you looking at your picture of where you are now and where you want to go and what gaps you need to fill. So that can happen with just one session, looking at that, helping you peel back those layers, right? Getting your head out of the sand, getting that true reality of, if income does not equal expenses type of thing.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
can definitely accomplish all of that is accomplished in that session one. And then from there, I go into a 4-month program where we set up what I was talking about, the cash flow system, the management of that, how to create all of those savings buckets, how to support that, how to then kind of keep rolling that forward into your future goals and aligning that. So taking where you are and then working down that path, but what is it that you truly dream and desire for your
Mhm.
future life? So I try to help blend that all in as we're doing these steps, as we're creating the new habits, as we're exploring all of the things. I have a current client, and the biggest struggle is, like, she's worried about running out of money. And every time we look at, her numbers, I'm like, but there's black and white, you're not. So exploring those money stories with her, same thing, like
Mhm.
money beliefs. Her parents were entrepreneurs, and so that instant, yes, it's working out, to no, it's not working out, she lived that. And so it's a true fear. She even tied it back to a fire her family had when she was younger, and she's like, I'm just going to lose everything. And so trying to build up that trust in yourself with
Yeah.
I love the black and white numbers. Black and white numbers are there, but
Yeah.
then we have to learn how to support ourselves with that and fill with those and be able to create something that in our heart we truly desire.
Absolutely. So interesting, really. Yeah, I think so much of our uh interaction with money comes from, what our relationship was. And I think you're right. I mean, both my parents were entrepreneurs as well. And yeah, you always have that, unless you can look at the numbers and see the black and white, which I do all the time, which is
Hmm.
helpful. But a lot of
Hmm.
people that don't, you do
Yeah.
always feel like, am I going to be able to sustain this? It's always one step away from, failure is what it feels like for
Hmm.
entrepreneurs a lot of the time. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So yeah. So that's I'd love to support people on their journey. So I have a process, we follow it, but every client is different. The support, the levels they need. So like with that client I was just talking about, getting the confidence to go in and ask for that pay raise. I had that with another gentleman last year, and it's like being stuck in that. So I really help you, whether it's income or expenses. And
Hmm.
it's not about me telling you what to do, it's what you truly want and helping you see that. We do values, we do mind mapping, we do, financial purpose. There's a lot of exercises where we get deeper into who you are with money. And so then
Hmm.
choices and options become really apparent to you. And it's no longer, oh, it's just restrictive and I can't live without that. It really opens up your eyes as to how that
Right.
means and what that means. So
Wonderful. Dalene, this has been so insightful. So, yes, so if they want to reach out to you, Instagram, are you on Instagram or Facebook as well?
yes, yep. Instagram, elevate_finances. I'm over on Facebook, Dalene Higgins. So yeah, come connect with me there, and I would love to chat with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.